Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Zoe, and I'm part of the team here at Crowdfunder. Hopefully, by the end of today's webinar, you'll have a really good understanding of crowdfunding and Sport England's Return to Play Active Together Fund, along with their newly launched Places and Spaces Fund. Hopefully, this information will help to prepare you for crowdfunding and especially for your sports organisation. At the end, you'll be sent a link to the Learn platform, which will show you how to crowdfund, giving you all the tools that you need to run a successful sports campaign with step-by-step guides and training to get you planning and creating and running a successful sports campaign. Just a quick few housekeeping points to go through before we do get started. We've allowed 30 minutes for this session. That does include a Q&A towards the end with a past project owner and also representatives from Sport England and our expert crowdfunder. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the chat box on the right hand side. And if we don't cover any of those questions throughout the course of the webinar through the slides, we'll get to those towards the end. We are actually working from home at the moment, so please do bear with us. You might find that there's technical issues with internet, in which case please just refresh your browser and you should come back into the live room, or there might be some unplanned interruptions like doorbells or dogs barking and general background noise. So do bear with us, and apologies if that does happen. Okay, so today we're going to hear from Rebecca from Sport England and also our crowdfunding expert, Kirsty. We're also going to hear from Sam as well, who's one of our amazing project owners who's just recently run a crowdfunding campaign. So without further ado, Rebecca, are you there?
I am. Can you see me?
Yes, absolutely. We can see you and hear you. Would you like to talk to us, please, about the funds that are available as match funding through Sport England?
Yeah, so great. Thanks for having me on today. And obviously, thanks for everyone joining. It's great to see so many kind of faces signing up. I'm part of the team at Sport England working across our crowdfunding, match funding initiatives that we've got live at the minute. We've got 2 live funding schemes, which the ladies will touch on in more detail later on in the session. One of which is Active Together, which focuses on supporting sports organisations to recover from the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, which may be a case of loss of income due to direct, indirect circumstances across the past 2 years, or to assist a kind of safe return to play. Whereas Places and Spaces is currently a match funding scheme focused in the West Midlands, which is due to kind of roll out nationally in the springtime. It's part of our Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games legacy funding. So it's supporting clubs aiming to activate their communities. And a huge part of both of these funds that are live at the minute is all the kind of wraparound support we have on offer. As we understand, online crowdfunding could be quite a new way of fundraising for a lot of you. So make the most of the time in the session today, ask any questions, and obviously use all the online materials we've got live at the minute as well. So if you have any further questions towards your campaign after the session, please do not hesitate in getting in touch with ourselves or the crowdfunding team. They've got loads of knowledge, and also make the most of the Q&A with Sam, because obviously she's done it and she can kind of obviously relate to a lot of you as well. So make the most of the session.
Thank you very much. Would you mind, Rebecca, staying with us off camera until the end, and then we'll have a Q&A. Hopefully some people attending today might have some Sport England specific questions for you. If you could come back at the end, that would be lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, Kirsty, are you there?
Indeed I am. Hello.
Brilliant. So Kirsty's going to talk you through the basics of crowdfunding.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks for joining us, everyone, today. So as Zoe says, just going to tell you a bit more about the actual crowdfunding aspect of it. So for those who are new to crowdfunding, what is it? So it's a great way to engage with your community and raise awareness of what your organisation is doing, what you're all about, and what you're trying to achieve. So what exactly will you do? Well, you're going to create a page, crowdfunding page, which you're going to use to promote your organisation to the via our online platform. You don't need to be too tech savvy to do this. This one on the page is obviously a brilliant example. That's what you're definitely aiming for. But the system, our platform, is really easy to use. It takes you through step by step to be able to set it all up, very user friendly. So you're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side. And then you're going to promote it to your crowd. So think about your immediate community within the organisation, but then obviously also the wider community. So don't fall into the trap, which can often be tricky, of just trying to appeal to your support, your members already, because they're more likely to support you anyway. So you're looking to reach the wider community when you're telling your story about what you're trying to achieve. Okay, and then that obviously then you get funded through donations and pledges. So we refer to donations or pledges, and pledges are when people pledge on a reward. So Crowdfunder is best known really as the #1 rewards-based crowdfunding platform in the UK. And you need to get inventive with rewards. Sometimes with obviously clubs and organisations, you can become a little bit limited in your thoughts because you're just immediately thinking of who's going to take part in the sport, and that certainly is something you need to think of. So coaching sessions, for example, for those who are either at sort of intermediate level looking to improve, or even new beginners. So coaching sessions and things that you can easily offer through the club are really good. But then also think about that wider community, people who aren't necessarily linked to your sport or really that interested in taking part, but do see the value of your organisation and want to support you anyway. So you can see some of the pictures on this slide here. We've got a fish and chips voucher from the local fish and chip shop, a week's bunny boarding at a bunny hotel, and so 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. So speak to members of your club and see what other sort of interests and hobbies and expertise they have that they could potentially offer for you, and also equally other members of the community that you know might be willing to give up their time and expertise as a reward. Now, the multiplier function is a really good function to use for sports clubs, because what a multiplier does is it allows other people to crowdfund on behalf of your main project. So on the left-hand side here, we have the main page, and this was the Spencer Lacrosse Club. They crowdfunded in 2021, and so you have a main page, and then every individual fundraiser can have their own page, which they can then promote to their own personal network. So that's sort of multiplying up the number of people that you can reach, and any money that's raised via their page feeds into that main project and counts towards the target. So it goes sort of, it fits naturally with sports clubs, because there's usually a bit of a competitive element running through there. Maybe you want to get some sports members, you know, competing against each other on how much money they can raise, or just, you know, taking away from the money element, just the sheer who can pedal the furthest on the bike in a space of time, or something like that. Make it quite fun. So I'm just going to recap really on the extra funding, how that works. So Rebecca has obviously given you the key parts of that. So we've got the two funds available at the moment. The Active Together, the Return to Play Active Together, as Rebecca mentioned, is got the focus of clubs looking to get back to how they were and replace potentially lost income or make up for other impact that's happened through COVID-19. And there's £7.5 million available in that pot initially. So it's up to a maximum of £10,000 available per project. And it's based on a percentage of your target. So what's important to note, and I maybe should have mentioned this earlier, Sport England will review your page as part of your application. So it's really important to create your page first and get it to a point where you think it's ready to go live. And then you apply for the funding through our platform, through your project dashboard, and Sport England's team will review your page They may think it's absolutely perfect. They'll come back to you if they're going to support your project. Alternatively, if they want to support you, but your page and your story that you've created isn't quite what they'd like to see, they may come back to you with some recommendations to change within a certain time period, and then that will be a condition of the pledge. The percentage of the pledge is based on your initial target, and what they take into consideration alongside your page is where you sit on the index of multiple deprivation as well. So that's part of their consideration, the area that your organisation is in. The second fund mentioned there, the places and spaces, Rebecca's already said, at the moment it's only in the West Midlands, so it's focused really, or to go hand in hand with the Commonwealth Games, and then we'll go nationally. But the same limits apply, £10,000 and up to 50% of your initial target. So in terms of securing that funding then, so once you get a pledge, you're successful in receiving an offer of a pledge from Sport England, you then will go live, and you need to reach 25% of your initial target and the number of required supporters for your particular individual project. So that table on the right hand side tells you how many, the minimum amount of required supporters you need. At that stage, the pledge amount will appear on your page and it will count towards your target. And what that does is really encourage your crowd to see that money on your page, and they know that you're heading towards success. So then the next step to secure that funding is to reach 100% of your initial target. If you don't reach 100% and your project closes, then you don't secure the extra funding. So that will be returned to Sport England. So to avoid that, reach 100% of your target. If you've still got time left on your crowdfunder by that point, you don't need to stop there. You can add what we call a stretch target, and that shows your community that you're still funding, even though you've reached that initial target, still funding for more. And you put a little message on your page to tell them what the extra money will go towards. So it's a great motivator for keeping that momentum going and just raising even more towards your organisation's needs. So we've obviously had a lot of projects funding through our platform, specifically through Sport England. So what you can do is go to the extra funding page. So if you go to crowdfunder.co.uk/funds, scroll down the page till you find the Sport England funds and click on it, and it will show you some of the previous projects that have crowdfunded. And there's all sorts of help for sports projects. It fits really well with sports clubs crowdfunding, because there's that competitive element. There's a community already built around you. And we've seen all sorts of types of organisations, from gymnastics to speed skating to scuba diving. So it really fits very well with sports. And finally, I just want to highlight that we also have an online learning course, which is free for anyone to access. And this is just a screenshot of how it would look. So it's really simple, easy to use, really clear instructions, give you tips and guidance on creating the perfect page and then how to plan your crowdfunder as well. So I'd highly recommend registering for that and completing that course to really consolidate what I've just covered with you in these few slides. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Zoe now.
Hi, Kirsty. Thank you. That was really informative, as always. What I'd like to do now is actually welcome Sam onto the screen. Sam, are you there? Hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
So, Sam, you recently crowdfunded, didn't you? Your campaign has pretty much only just closed.
Yeah.
And you were raising money for the Worcester Norton Community Sports Hall, and you were successfully raised just over £10,000, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit more about your project, please?
So our project is, at the moment, there is a derelict cricket pavilion up at our local cricket pitches. We live in a small village, so we're on the outskirts of Worcester. We don't have any local amenities, so we're actually building a brand new community sports hall. We'll build it where the pavilion is. We've got to knock one structure down and start another one. We've got all of our planning permission, but with COVID and everything, all of our material prices have gone through the roof. So we do have a funding shortfall. That's why we used our crowdfunding this page to start. I know it's a small amount, £10,000. It's great, but in the build costs, our build costs are £1 million. So, but we've got 915,000. So actually, all those that crowdfunding it's our local residents have actually sort of come along and supported it, and it's been brilliant, really brilliant.
That's really good. So what kind of made you decide to crowdfund as opposed to other kind of revenue streams? Was it to be able to connect with the community, would you say?
Yeah, I think crowdfunding, it's more than crowdfunding. Yes, you're going to make some money, and yes, you're going to raise some funds, but actually it's a huge advertising campaign. If you do it right, as a result of crowdfunding, we've actually had local residents that have come forward that have said, actually, I'm a quantity surveyor, or I'm a painter and decorator. We've had one company that come forward and said, we'll do all of your balustrades. You know, they want to. They found out about the project by looking at it online and seeing it develop, looking at the plans and everything, and then come forward to offer their services at either mates rates or in some cases free. So it's brilliant. If you need some work, you know, if your crowdfunding involves a project like that, then actually you're going to get on board lots of other people that will support you.
That's really good to hear. And that's actually covered one of my other questions, which was the kind of non-financial benefits of crowdfunding. And I guess what's important there is your kind of page almost is your kind of shop window, isn't it, into the project, or your kind of portfolio, for want of a better word. So rather than approaching these businesses kind of individually and having to kind of retell the story, it's a really lovely place where people can come and get a really good idea of what your project consists of. That's really lovely to hear. Did you find anything kind of challenging, or what was the thing you found difficult about crowdfunding, if anything?
I think initially, to be honest, I was quite daunted by it. So I looked at everybody else's pages and felt that they were really fantastic, really professional. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just a volunteer, haven't done it before, and was genuinely a little bit frightened and sort of thinking, oh my God, how do I start? Yeah. But I've got to say, I started to build the page, and I thought, well, I'll have a go. And the page was quite easy to use. So that was brilliant. And then I got lots and lots of support. It was Chloe that was messaging me and sort of saying, okay, I've looked at your page and I think you need this or you need that. And actually, I was guided through the whole process. So I think my initial fears of not knowing what to do and being the first time that we've ever done crowdfunding, I'm not hugely techie. I do use a laptop all the time, but I'm not a tech expert. But actually, just working my way through it, I would say that, and the first week that when we first opened our page, it was good, it was okay. But by the end of it, we'd added so much, and we'd added more videos, more photographs, more updates. It became more and more, the photographs on our page became more from the events that we were doing. And actually it became a bit of a news report, and we got more and more people involved. And by the end of it, I was quite pleased with the page. I'd definitely do it again. But I think you learn that as you go along, but there's lots of support.
That's really good to hear. And there's a link to your project in the chat box, actually, so I highly recommend everyone goes and have a little look at it, because the beginning video is brilliant with all the kids getting involved. But you're right, and it's something we talked about earlier, didn't we, before we started, that the planning stage of a crowdfunder is crucial, making sure you've got everything, in place for your story, and, uploading a video and rewards, all those kind of things, but actually being reactive as well throughout the course of the live campaign. And if you feel that something's lacking or it's not working quite right, you can edit your page, you can add more images. Posting updates is really important, and kind of keeping everybody engaged with your journey as a project owner is great, and people want to see that. They want to see that kind of engagement from the project owners. What did you find worked the best for you?
I would say quite honestly, less jargon and more photographs. I think people like seeing videos, they like seeing photographs. Initially, on my first attempt at the crowdfunding page, in those early weeks, I'd got lots of architects' drawings and lots of plans and lots of facts and figures and costs. And actually, I think whilst I felt it was important to share that with the community, actually what they wanted to see is they wanted to see an artist's impression of the finished product, or they wanted to see what the children wanted. They wanted to hear what the local people wanted. So initially, my first crowdfunding video that for the first week was me giving a report, as it were, that I'd spent ages in my dining room planning and with a little script. And actually, I think a lot of my family said, well, you just look like a news reporter. So then I went up to the clubhouse, up to the site, up to where it's all happening, where the project, you know, the home of the project, and actually stopped a few people and said, would you mind just giving me a couple of words? What would it mean to you to have a new community hall? And then we got some of our local children, and they literally sat in front of the crumbling building and said, you know, we want somewhere to put our back to castle. We want somewhere to have our parties. We want somewhere to have a sports club. And out of there, you know, that's the true reflection of our local community. And as soon as I put that on and said, you know, have a look what the local children want, every parent in the vicinity wanted to go on and have a look. All the kids wanted to have a look. And before I knew it, we were getting lots and lots of visits to the site, just because the children just speak honestly and they're quite funny. There's no editing involved. So I think it's important to get your local community involved, because before you know it, they will then start telling their friends and family, and then people will start pledging, and your money starts jumping up before you realise it, with people that you didn't even know were out there looking.
That's really lovely advice, and you're so right. It's all about the people behind the project and the people it's going to benefit. And if project owners can reach out and kind of engage with the community and in the way that you have, it adds a really lovely element to the story, doesn't it? And it's really engaging. People are short of time these days, so videos and images are a really great way of keeping somebody kind of engaged on your project page and telling the story. Lots and lots of text can be a bit overwhelming for somebody viewing your page, so completely hit the nail on the head. Kind of visually impressive pages and videos are a great way to kind of keep that engagement. You've mentioned that you are potentially planning on crowdfunding again, which is great news. What advice would you give to somebody now that you've kind of done it once and it's obviously been successful? Anybody attending today, just kind of a takeaway piece of advice that might benefit them?
I would say focus on your rewards massively. I didn't focus on the rewards initially because I didn't quite understand how they worked. But having used it now and having seen, people are very happy to pledge money if they're going to get something back. It's quite difficult to get people to pledge £10 or £20 or £50 if they're not getting anything in return. So from my point of view, I would say to anybody, find out what's on offer, what in your team, in the team around you, who's got what service that they can offer. So I didn't twig to this immediately. It took me a couple of weeks, but then a lot of our pledges were sold on. So my son's a boiler gas engineer, and I said to him, right, okay, can you do me a gas service? And he said, yeah. So he's actually offering his time for nothing, but I put it onto our rewards as gas boiler service. I promoted my son's company, so he got a promotion out of it because he's supplying that service. He doesn't charge us as a company, and the customer donate. The person makes their reward, makes their pledge of £60, and actually it hasn't cost the CIC anything. It's got promotion for that business, and the person feels like they're getting something back for their £60. So it was brilliant. So. For it, we offered gas boiler services. We're based on a cricket pitch. So I offered advertising for a year. You can buy those big banners. They were, I can get a huge banner for £20 printed. And I offered as our reward, the banner to go up at the side of the cricket pitch. So it will be on display throughout all of the matches, and a cream tea, an afternoon tea for the business that's sponsoring us for £250. And again, we've got businesses that have paid £250. They're very happy to part with their money because they're going to get a whole year of sponsorship and know that every match they're going to get promotion, and they get to bring their family down for afternoon tea. So things like that. I think we also did, if people are running a campaign over Easter time, get somebody like Tesco's to support you. Tesco's have a certain amount of money that they can give to local community projects. Get them to donate you 20 Easter eggs and put them on your reward page. So somebody's paying £5 to get an Easter egg. You might have to drop it off locally. You might have to put but actually you're not paying for that. The person's happy to pledge because they're getting something back. So, you know, anything like that, I think you should focus on those.
That's really good advice, and a nice, like you kind of touched upon there, a really nice broad range of price points and also kind of interest points as well. And don't be afraid to put those kind of higher price point rewards for those corporates and those businesses, because actually a lot of them do have you know, marketing budgets and promotional budgets that they can put towards sponsorship like that. So that's a really, really good piece of advice. And don't be afraid to ask your local community. As you've proved, you have some lovely, lovely rewards on your page. So I think everyone should go and check it out and get a little bit of inspiration as to what they could be putting onto theirs. Thank you so much, Sam. Would you mind hanging around just for a few minutes to see if anyone's got any questions as well that they wouldn't mind asking yourself?
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem.
Brilliant. Okay, well, if I could welcome back Kirsty and Rebecca, please, and we'll see if we've had any questions come through.
We have.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's good. Right, I'll just have a little look through. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Conscious of time, so I'm just going to say to anybody who does need to leave us at past, this will probably run over to go through the questions, but you will receive the recording, which obviously you'll get the answers to these questions. So.
Perfect. Okay. So this is in regards to the Spaces and Spaces, currently active in the West Midlands. When is it likely to go national?
The plan is that it's due to go national kind of springtime, so April. But as I said, you can, if you've got a project kind of that you're considering or thinking about and you're not in the West Midlands already, you're more than welcome to kind of get in contact with us. If it's a capital project, of course, because Places and Spaces is kind of a capital funding programme, or likewise, if it's not, drop us an email because it might be also relevant to Active Together.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Rebecca. This is from Linda. Is there an overall time limit for a crowdfund project? We're looking to do something which would take until 2027 to complete as a project.
So from a crowdfunder perspective, and then I'll hand to Rebecca, I think maybe for the funding part. When it's a long-reaching project like that, you need to try and decide where crowdfunding fits into your overall timeline. So if you need money up front to get the project started, think about doing it at the very beginning to get that money. It can be done halfway through if it's for a specific part of your project, and then you've got a bit of a story to tell as to what you've achieved so far and then what you're going on to do, and then maybe towards the end if it's just the final touches on something. In terms of the length of time it runs for, you're looking at around 4 to 6 weeks for a live campaign. So you need to think about where you're going to fit that in. So you wouldn't run the project or a crowdfunder for the whole length of the project. In terms of how long the Sport England funding is available for, Rebecca, maybe you can cover that.
Yeah, that's actually a question from Chris. So that's is there a deadline for the scheme? That's Return to Play Active Together.
No, there's not a deadline for the funding pots. It's ultimately until they run out. At the minute, there's plenty still to be allocated in both match funding budgets. So yeah, ultimately the Active Together one, it's kind of help assist off the back of the coronavirus pandemic and to get everyone returned to play. So ultimately, we imagine projects are pretty kind of time sensitive anyway, and you want to get that campaign live. There's not kind of like a strict deadline, but as the girls say, just keep in mind that kind of time frame in terms of when you're planning to launch your campaign. I'd advise potentially coming into us once you've had a look at all the kind of the tools and in terms of looking at setting up your page, so it's kind of pretty much ready to go, and then anything else we can help and support with in terms of getting it where it needs to be or kind of help you improve it even further, then you've got more time for it to be live and potentially receive our pledge to kind of maximise pledges as opposed to coming in when you're kind of almost finished and you're already live. That was the only advice I'd give.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, next question. Is there any ability to link donations to gift aid too, to increase the value of donations? And if so, would the match fund be based on donations excluding gift aid?
So yes, you can link gift aid if you are registered for gift aid as the charity. So you can receive gift aid on donations from your supporters, and the supporter is asked in the checkout section whether they want to give gift aid, and they're asked obviously for their address so it can matched up for HMRC. In terms of the match funding, I suspect not, because it's from an organisation. But Rebecca, do you know if it would be eligible for gift aid, the match funding? I don't think so.
The match funding pledge itself wouldn't be eligible for gift aid, but as you say, kind of rewards and kind of any donations, depending on what you're registered as an organisation, then yeah, certainly.
Definitely. Just quickly on that, if you go to crowdfunder.co.uk, down to the bottom of the page, and you'll see our help centre, type in gift aid in the search box, and there's a help article on it that you can read.
Perfect, thank you. We've got a question here from Poppy. They are a CIC. Do you recommend crowdfunding for the whole organisation or for a specific project? What are people more likely to donate to? That's one that comes up quite a lot, isn't it?
It is. From Crowdfunder, we'd usually say it's best to focus on a specific project, because it's easier to tell your crowd what you're aiming for, and they can see what the money's going towards specifically, rather than just into the organisation. I don't know if anybody else, Samantha, you're running a CIC yourself. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think if you can actually talk about your project, at least you can tell people, you can give them an update on how it's going. They need to know what they're spending their money on. And I think if they know what the money's going towards, you're more likely to get the donations.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam. This is from Robert. Is the Active Together funding available for use on capital revenue costs?
Lost your sound.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't quite hear the end of that one.
We've lost you, Zoe. I'm going to read it out. I don't know if you can see that, Rebecca. So, is the Active Together funding available for use on capital or revenue costs, such as tennis court maintenance or resurfacing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the, obviously, we understand throughout the pandemic, a lot of these kind of pitch maintenance, clubhouse maintenance works, you would have necessarily fundraised yourselves, but obviously you would have missed opportunities to kind of gain that revenue and gain that fundraising events throughout that. So yeah, absolutely. If your kind of ability to fund those types of projects has been affected over the past couple of years, then yeah, put that all in your page. Because also, again, like the previous kind of question, that'll kind of sell your case and cause to the crowd, and they'll get behind you and support you to try and get it over the line.
Lovely. Can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Sorry about that. This one is from Judy. I think this might be for Sam. How did you raise the rest of the money?
Oh, for the bigger sum, we actually applied for grants. So that was through grant funding. So we tend to find, we know what we need, and then it's a case of trawling through as many grant organisations as you can to find out if you fit their scenario, and if you do, then you apply for the grant, and you have to meet that grant funds criteria. So all of our money has come from grants, other than the crowdfunding, which has come from individuals.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. And this one in from Paul. Again, this is one that kind of crops up a few times throughout these webinars. He's wondering the main difference between crowdfunding and other platforms, fundraising platforms.
Yeah. So you specifically compared, rather than just giving, for example, where you can create a campaign, add all the supporting information and promote your campaign, you can do all that on Crowdfunder. Just Giving is just crowdfunding as well. We're Crowdfunder as a company name. So it's exactly the same thing. So comparable, and the benefit of doing it with Crowdfunder is access to the match funding, such as this, that you won't get probably through Just Giving, and the ability to offer rewards through your project as well. So it's all those added benefits that you get with Crowdfunder.
Thank you, Kirsty. This through from Nicholas. Looking back at targets, if you reach your target but not the number of sponsors or supporters, I guess, do you get the funding if you ended up getting some very affluent donations that kind of hit your target sooner, but it's from fewer people?
No.
So obviously those milestones from Sport England, they're pretty set in stone, aren't they, in terms of it does need to be through a certain amount of unique supporters as well?
Yeah, ultimately we don't discourage any kind of larger donations also we're one of many extra funders on the crowdfunding site, which you're more than welcome to look into as well. But as part of our pledge criteria, as Sam mentioned, that we kind of ask for the raise to come from a crowd of supporters to kind of know that obviously it is kind of the community invested in it as well. That it will be determined, I think you touched on it previously on the slide, determine what your target is. It can range from 25 supporters up to 100 supporters, and ultimately it's a good campaign page, which ultimately they generally are, and we can help you deliver that. We haven't seen any issues in kind of reaching those supporter numbers if you kind of promote it and share it across your network, and also have some great rewards on there.
I would add to that and say it is about the rewards. We, as a CIC, we did back in November, we did a bonfire and fireworks event, and we had 1,000 people attending that and raised thousands of pounds, which we paid into our crowdfunding page. But it cast as one pledge, even though it was thousands of pounds. So you do need to have lots and lots of little rewards on there, especially if, you know, money may be tight. I'm looking at some of the comments. In some areas, money may be tight, but you only need to have a small amount to get the number of pledges up to the figures that you need.
That leads on nicely, doesn't it, to a question from Rob, which is asking, has anybody from a highly deprived area had any success with crowdfunding? Then one of the poorest postcode areas in England, and just worrying, obviously, that people have got not able to afford most things, as opposed to, you know, crowdfunding support as well. I mean, Kirsty, possibly one for you. It's difficult to say, isn't it? It's probably worth exploring the crowdfunding website and actually searching by area to see what's kind of worked within a similar kind of area to yourself, or maybe even within the same area.
I'd just touch on that as well, because we obviously record a lot of data and feedback across all of our funds, and in terms of, and that was often a kind of initially a bit of a worry for a lot of campaigns coming into us, and obviously for us it's a real priority to delve and kind of reach those deprived communities and inequalities in sport, but actually across the board we haven't seen it be an issue in terms of those lower IMD areas at all. Ultimately, sometimes the on average pledge might be a bit lower, but especially in terms of supporter numbers, it's absolutely the same, if not sometimes higher, in those lower deprived areas. We also have, in terms of our pledge criteria, we can scale it in terms of what your IMD is. So if you are from like the lower IMD areas, it might actually result in you getting a higher pledge compared to, so it's all stuff we can work with. And ultimately, we haven't found it to be an issue in terms of those kind of more deprived areas.
Yeah. That's really encouraging. Thank you.
Have maybe been grown up in that area and moved away as well, who still are connected to that area, you know, as well, so you can reach out to them.
Brilliant, thank you guys. Okay, this one we've had come in. Crowdfunder is great if you have an established premises. Sadly, our organisation are in the stages of trying to seek our own premises, and local support from our council is non-existent, even though so much redundancy. Okay, how can we get around that? I think that's quite specific to your particular kind of project. I mean, you could potentially crowdfund to be able to raise money for a premises. That's, you know, not unusual. But in terms of how that kind of relationship with your local council, I think that's obviously not a crowdfunder issue. But you could absolutely crowdfund to potentially raise money to secure a premises or a business site. Would you agree, Kirsty?
Yes, I think so. I think you're quite right. It's not truly an issue linked to crowdfunding. It does help if you have premises, but equally, if the organisation exists before the premises, you can raise funds for the organisation itself. You know, for something you're looking to do. So. Okay.
Right. Okay. So, in terms of if you're a national organisation, working mainly in deprived areas. This is kind of a postcode question, really, in terms of if for the Active Together Fund, it requires obviously a postcode, which we ask everyone to enter so they're matched with funds, and to look at the level of deprivation in that area. If it is a national organisation, I'm assuming the answer to this one would be the postcode for where the project will take place is what they need to be entering.
Yeah, and ultimately we don't advise national organisations to actually to apply to the funds, because ultimately what we found is this kind of rewards-based crowdfunding actually is far more efficient locally, and we're kind of looking at supporting kind of local community-based campaigns and kind of activating that community. So they tend, in terms of what we found in sport organisations, they don't work as well. If I'm not sure who the question came from, if you've got a specific area in mind that you want to target or a specific group that you do activate, then you could also kind of look to set up the campaign via that local area. If you have any more questions, feel free to get in touch with us, and I'm sure we can help look into it for you if there's any more suitable funding that we've got available at the minute.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. This from Aspie. We are applying for another grant. If that other grant is successful, can they pledge it to help us reach the target on Crowdfunder?
From a purely mechanical sense, yes, it still needs to be an online card transaction, and therefore there will be a transaction fee attached. So you need to think carefully if you want to take, have that fee attached if they've already paid the money to you. That's the Crowdfunder, platform answer. Rebecca, I don't know if you want to answer that. Would it count towards the target for the funding, extra funding?
Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat that one? I was just trying to scroll through some of the questions. What was it again?
Question's gone now, but essentially they have received, they've been successful in receiving a grant from another body towards a project. So just wondering if that can count towards their target for the Sport England match funding.
Yeah, as I guess in terms of, obviously we don't discount any extra funding that you've applied for, and sometimes that might be in terms of a grant from another body. I just take into account the supporter numbers. Ultimately, you still have to support those in terms of reaching your target, and ultimately that'll account for kind of 50% of your total, pretty much. So we wouldn't necessarily look to allow campaigns to receive more than 50% kind of additional kind of funding aside from their crowd to go towards their target, which is the supporter numbers kind of allow for. So hopefully that helps, makes sense.
Lovely, thank you. The question from Rob, I think Rebecca's probably covered that for you in terms of, he's just asking there about being in a deprived area, but actually, as you mentioned, it isn't necessarily a barrier to crowdfunding and receiving that kind of match funding, which is great and very encouraging news, which is brilliant. Okay, sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. So yes, we've talked about the location of the sports club and projects. That does get taken into account, as you've explained, Rebecca, as well. So that's for Chris. So yes, it will absolutely get taken into account. So you do need to put your postcode in as you're setting up your page. Okay, so I think these ones we can reply to in the chat unless any more have come through.
Yep. Just a very simple answer to Suzanne, who's asking if this is being recorded and available later. Yes, it is. We'll email you a link to the recording.
Thank you. And in terms of Ben's, it's a partnership between kind of Crowdfunder and Sport England. So it's the match funding is available through Crowdfunder, kind of solely through our platform, because it's a partnership that's developed between the two, as opposed to any other kind of funding platforms, which is one of the benefits of using Crowdfunder. We are ID1. Okay, Rob.
That was in the IMD one.
Yeah, IMD one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I think that's everything in terms of questions. Yeah. What I'm just going to do very quickly, for those of you that are still with us, I'm just going to share into that chat box just a few links. We've got here all the different ways in which you can actually find support via the crowdfunding platform. So you've also got the help centre, the coaching hub, a way to drop in, book for more drop-ins, those kind of things. So feel free to use any of those links to kind of help you further your journey. But is there any final comments from yourself, Kirsty or Rebecca?
No, I mean, for me, just encourage everyone to go on to that online learning course, link in earlier in the chat box. You can also find it via the sports page on our website, and get in touch with Rebecca if you've any further questions about the Sport England part again.
Yeah, any questions at all, just get in touch with either of us, and like I said, make the absolute most out of all those kind of support tools. They're really useful, and we're here to answer any questions.
Yeah,
thanks.
and of course, sorry, I don't know, did you just mention there, Zoe, about the drop-ins?
I did. Yeah,
yes.
There's a link to the Eventbrite, so you can drop in a book for drop-ins, and any future webinars are on there as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca and Sam and Kirsty, for joining us today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And hopefully you've had some really useful information, which will help you to confidently start your crowdfunding journey. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.